Welcome to the 9th edition of the Rain Race podcast, and welcome to the month of May. We're going to be discussing our exciting plans for the month of May later in the episode, but before that, we're going to be talking about the latest news and recaps from Formula One, IndyCar, and sports cars. I'm Chris Aurelio. This is Rain Race. Let's go. I'm joined here alongside Kyle Cuthbertson.
What's up?
And it's been 2 weeks since we've been on air. Also, by the way, it is Tuesday when this is going up because I was very, very, very busy over the past week. But that also means that it's May 1st, so happy month of May, everybody. We have a lot of plans going on for the month of May, so you're going to want to stick around until the end of the episode. And we do advise that you listen to the entire thing. We're going to start off here with the news. Because it's been 2 weeks, there's actually been a lot of stuff that's happened. GRC has officially closed operations for the 2018 season. They already laid out their schedule for the 2018 season. However, we saw just around 2 weeks ago that their website actually took all the events or the tickets. They were no longer selling tickets on their website, and then a couple hours after that, they announced the official ceasing of operations for 2018. Now, they did say that they plan on coming back for 2019 with the new quote-unquote platinum class of cars. However, we'll have to wait and see on that whole thing. Now, the number one thing that they were citing for the for the cease of operations in 2018 was that number one, manufacturers had lost interest, and number two, they had a lot of venues losing interest, all citing back to financial issues that they were involved in, particularly with tracks. So, Kyle, if you'd like to lead us down this road here of this sort of the demise of GRC, as we're going to call it here.
Well, I'm going to say it. Obviously, we saw that what spec racing does, it kills, and it wasn't surprising that the manufacturers didn't want involved. And now this has happened. I think the biggest part is a lot of tracks now have to, give back tickets, and all that shenanigans has to go over, and it's going to be a lot of money, and it's really going to be interesting to see how all of that mumbo jumbo plays out of all of this.
Well, see, this was one of the arguments I had, because you saying spec racing killed it sort of originated with our friend David Land, who made a video saying that spec racing kills. Now, I countered that argument. I said that the manufacturers involved, from Honda, Subaru, Ford, all of them were pretty much already committed to leaving the series because of these financial issues that they were aware of. So from the way it sounded, they didn't really have any choice except to go with the spec racing category. Now, the only team that really bought into it was Brian Herta, so they didn't really have a lot of potential going into 2018. However, all things given, I don't think that that's the number one thing that killed the series. Of course, the whole thing that started this was the financial issues dating back to the middle of last year. So the next thing I want to go over is the Le Mans and WEC TV deal for North America. Previously, since 2015, they were broadcasted on Fox Sports family of networks. And now for 2018 and 2019, we see a deal with Velocity on TV and Motor Trend for online and mobile apps. So right now they've promised, and I'm going to put promised in quotes because we're going to talk about that in a tiny bit. They've promised flag-to-flag coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans for 2018 and 2019 and the 8 hours of Sebring in 2019. Now, Marshall Pruett was the first person I saw who broke this news, and he also said that they'd be broadcasting the first and last hours of the 6-hour races. However, if you look at the TV guide at the moment for next weekend's race at Spa, you would see that there's no coverage listed under Velocity. Quick cutaway right here. This episode was recorded on Sunday night, and ever since then, Velocity has updated their schedule, which now shows the first and last hour of Spa. So forget about that last comment there. And I went to Motor Trend's app to see where they have any details regarding the race on that, and there's nothing on that either. So yes, while I'd assume that they're going to broadcast the race on the Motor Trend app, they just haven't mentioned anything yet so far. And the thing that annoys me the most about this deal so far is that Motor Trend seems even less involved than Fox was. And I think if we're going to make an analogy here, it's sort of similar to the ABC deal where maybe they care more about the big races like Le Mans. They care only about those. I want to say ABC deal, I of course mean their IndyCar deal where they primarily only care about the Indianapolis 500 and they're pretty lackluster with the rest of their races. I mean, from what I've seen so far, I think Velocity is heading down the same road. They only are going to care about Le Mans, and they're going to give pretty much the rest of the races, pretty much barring Sebring, the shaft when it comes to coverage. So, and then another negative that comes out of this whole thing is that the WEC app, which I personally have depended on for coverage because it's fantastic, it's commercial free, pretty good commentary, great access to all the races, all at a pretty reasonable price. That's going to be geo-blocked in North America. So if you're in the United States and Canada, you're not actually going to have access to that app with the onboards and the official race feed. So I think that that's a huge shame, obviously, because it's hurting the exposure that the series is getting to these target audiences. And if they really want to brand this as their super season, where we're supposed to get excited about all the new cars and all the new manufacturers, and not all the new cars and all the new drivers, we have drivers like Alonso and Jenson Button was recently announced. I don't think that they're doing a great job for getting that North American exposure out there.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually quite pleased to see this deal, though. But like when I saw Velocity, because Velocity to me, when I noticed them when I got my when I got cable, this is when I finally got to see them. They've been airing like old speed shows and stuff. I was like, oh wow, this is cool. But it definitely doesn't look like they're taking WEC as serious, and I don't think they're taking it as like what it could be. Like it really could be something great. And isn't Motor Trend, aren't those the people that stream PWC too?
Yeah, they had a deal
different?
with PWC. I saw that PWC is on YouTube now. They're streaming it
Yeah.
live on YouTube, so I don't know if that deal still exists, but yeah, it's $50 a year. They stream a whole variety of motorsports series, so it's not even that I have a problem with. I'll gladly spend $50 on Motor Trend on demand. But I think it's the lack of promotion, lack of exposure, because if you're not a serious sports car guy like myself or Kyle, more so myself, obviously.
Yeah, I was about to say.
More so myself, obviously. You wouldn't even be aware that Motor Trend was broadcasting it because there hasn't been much said about it. I saw an article on Daily Sports Car Racer 365, and WEC made one small press release about it. But other than that, I'd have no idea, especially the fact that the WEC app is going to be geo-blocked for the streaming side of things. And another thing that I noticed is that if you go on the WEC app, even in the United States where I am, you still have the ability to give them $42 to purchase a season pass. So they better be ready for when Spa rolls around next weekend and the people who paid $42 not being aware that it'd be geo-blocked, they better be ready for some mass refunds, is the only thing I can really say on that subject. But overall, looking at this whole deal as a whole, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I think, in particular, Fox did a horrible job at broadcasting Le Mans for what it is. I think that they treated it, considering it's one of the three big races in the world next to Monaco and Indianapolis, I don't think that they really gave it the sort of prestige that it deserves. So I think that Velocity having the coverage and promising at the moment flag-to-flag coverage, using Eurosport commentators, by the way, because Eurosport is owned by Discovery, just like Velocity. So we're going to have the Eurosport commentary team, and they're experienced, and they've been doing this for, I think it's been over 10 years now, since 2007, I believe. So they're definitely experienced in the whole business. I think it's a good thing. Well, of course, we'll have to wait and see with Le Mans and everything, but I think it's a fair deal, but like you said, the biggest thing is that it could be so much more. Because from what I've seen, Velocity is the type of network that's airing reality TV shows related to motorsport, or not related to cars and automobiles, but they're airing a lot of reruns of these. So if you could cut off some of the reruns and put in more live motorsport content, I think that you could really get a channel in there like Speed, like we had with Speed, where you had the car restoration, car auction shows, and you also had the live motorsport content. So I think the biggest thing is that it's just a missed opportunity here.
Yeah, I think if you can make another speed again, I think nowadays I think speed would be huge, and if you got something like that, I think a lot of people would be into it. It'd be great.
Yes, so we'll have to see how this whole deal pans out over the super season. Next thing we want to go over here is the 2021 Formula One engine regulations, which were announced 2 weeks ago in Bahrain. So the number one thing on the list that they're changing for next year is they're changing the fuel allowance in the cars from 105 kilograms to 110. Not a major difference, but of course, what that's going to allow in the races is for the cars to run on rich engine modes if they want to for a longer period of time. Particularly some of the races like Singapore, though, where Singapore is the longest race on the schedule distance-wise, it should mean more flat-out action and less fuel conservation. And they're also going to be using biometric gloves on the hands of the drivers for safety purposes. Now, I assume the way these work is they have sensors on them.
They were very like bland in the in the article. Like there wasn't many details.
What I could basically assume here is the gloves are going to have sensors similar to the G sensors that they have on the car, where if the car goes over a maximum G force, it'll automatically deploy the medical car, like we saw actually this past weekend at Baku with Romain Grosjean. So that's another thing that they're going to be introducing.
For me, I think the one interesting note from this list is the weight of the car and the driver. Now, it surprised me that the weight of the driver like still matters in F1 because, for example, IndyCar does it where you got a lighter driver. There's certain pieces of the car that you can add weight, so you make the weight, and the weight in every car is the same. But where you add weight to the car and like how you do it, it can be different. So you can like find ways about it, and then if you have a heavier driver, you can Connor Daly, Graham Rahal, you can take weight out of the car. That's how IndyCar does it now. F1, that's what surprised me. There's nothing really like that.
And the last thing that we're going to see next year is the MGUH, which is the heat energy recovery system, will be dropped from the cars. Now, that's actually the largest thing, I'd say, from this whole list, because that's going to be saving a lot of money for the teams. That's one of the most expensive components on the car. If you're not aware of how it works, it basically takes the hot exhaust fumes, and it's part of the car's hybrid system, so it takes those hot exhaust fumes and transforms it into electrical energy. So I think that this will be a benefit to some of the smaller teams like Sauber or like Haas or Toro Rosso. I think that that'll be a great advantage for them. Now, we saw manufacturers like Ferrari and Mercedes not so fond about it. Ferrari in particular seemed to be pretty upset about the decision. But I think overall it'll be a positive thing to try to make the cars a little bit closer together between the big three that we see with Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari to some of the smaller teams down the list.
And then the next topic is, I didn't want to put this in case you missed it because there is like a couple just things to touch on. The entry list for Mid-Ohio for IMSA next week came out, and there's 34 entries, and kind of the key parts to look at it. Spirit of Daytona is going to miss another race. I'd like to know when they were going to be back, because remember, that's my season beginning pick, and it's disturbing. And Land Audi, weren't they supposed to do a full season? And Bill Auberlin, the most surprising one is Bill Auberlin will be racing GTD with Turner, because he can still race BMWs, but he's not with the factory. And Meyershank Racing, that's still weird. They're going to bring 2 cars to their home race, and Wright Motorsports is adding a second car. Now, this is weird. Wright Motorsports is adding a second car only for the sprint races. They're not going to bring them to the endurance race. That's weird. And then the last thing is Hart was planning to do Mid-Ohio for like a home race thing, and they don't have the funds, so that's very sad. We won't see Mr. Eversley on the track.
Touching on the Wright Motorsports thing, I'd say the number one reason why they're not going to bring 2 cars for the endurance rounds is lack of drivers, I'd say, if it's one thing. Because the endurance races, barring Watkins Glen, have 3 drivers per car rather than 2 for the sprint races. So if I had to make one prediction, that would be it. It is a little bit odd to see, but I don't know. If I had to say one thing,
It's
it'd probably be
different.
that. And Spirit of Daytona, you were talking about when you think they're going to be back. I believe they said they plan on a return for Watkins Glen in late June, early July. They repaired their car after the Sebring accident, and they're starting to shake it down again, get it back out, doing some tests. But you got to remember that even with that Cadillac backing, they're still a pretty small team, so they're going to have to be taking their time with this one and sort of recouping that program. We hope to see him back at Watkins Glen. And like you touched on as well, Bill Arberlin, it's great to see him back at Turner. Right now, he's only an endurance driver for BMW Factory. So it's going to be great to see him back for another race. And Mike Shank, local homeboys, bringing 2 cars. It was rumored for quite a few weeks, so it's going to be great to see them bringing those 2 cars to Mid-Ohio. All right, and the last thing we have for the news portion of this episode is Indy 500 qualifying, because we've talked about this for 2 weeks now, but Kyle actually got a little bit of a confirmation, because we were still pretty confused on it, even with Kyle on the call, on how it's going to be laid out. But luckily, there's quite an experienced man named Robin Miller who answered that question for him. So if you'd like to go over the response that Robin Miller gave you on how this whole Indy 500 qualifying will unfold this year, that'd be fantastic.
So it's amazing I wasn't the only one. I actually saw a lot of people in the racer comments saying, thank God Robin Miller laid out the qualifying because they were so confused. So just to kind of clarify it all. First day of qualifying from 11 a.m. to 5:50 p.m. It'll determine the 33 positions in the field, and it's four lap averages, and then all entries are guaranteed at least one 4-lap attempt to qualify, provided the car is properly and timely presented. And there's no limit on the number of qualifying attempts that you can make. So instead of like a couple years ago where you can make 3 attempts, you can just make as many as you want, which I think that's good. Group 1 on Sunday. Each entry in Group 1, so basically you have to do a 4-lap attempt. And that's all laid out in reverse order of the positions from the previous day. Fastest qualifier in the position will get 10th on down. And the Fast 9 shootout will be 1st to 9th. And you're forced to do a 4-lap run. I don't exactly know what happens if you don't do a 4-lap run on the second day. What happens then? But anyways, you get last chance qualifying on May 20th if needed. So the whole last chance qualifying thing is, we were right, it is like a if needed. So if you wreck or have a mechanical problem on your first run, and you can come back on Sunday and try to get back in the field. And basically how they'll do that is, if someone tries to get back into the field on Sunday because of mechanical or something, the best that they could qualify back into the field is I believe 30th, because it's all for the last row if you have mechanical and try to last chance it. Now you're thinking, well, that's not fair. If they bump into the field, what about 33rd place? Do they get a chance to come back at them? The good news is, yes, they do. So how that'll work, if you're 33rd, you get bumped out by a last chance qualifier, you get another run to bump out someone else. And I guess it'll just be a whole nother session. So that's the thing. I believe that's actually new. I've never seen that whole bit in the rules and the setup before. But bump day, pole day, bump day Saturday, pole day Sunday is basically how it's working. And I think that whole 2 lines thing in the pit road is still a thing too.
All right, so we already brushed on in the last episode the good and the bad of this whole new procedure, but given the new information that we have, where would you stand on that whole the good, the bad, and the when it comes to the qualifying format for this year? Personally, I would say, like I said in the last episode, it's all right. I think the biggest problem is that it's still too confusing. The fact that we had to have Robin Miller, who's been in the business since the 1960s, clarify it for us, just kind of says a lot. So for the more casual fans, I don't think it's going to be a great thing. I'd rather just see them go with a more simplified format. But I don't know. Hopefully the commentators do it justice when they have to explain how the format rolls out. I'm
going to be crossing my fingers for ABC, because don't screw this up and explain the format. I'm kind of in the middle on this. I'm in the middle of, it's not the worst format, but like, yeah, it could be simpler, and it probably be better if it was simpler. I do like that you get unlimited attempts. Still don't like the Fast 9 shootout. Yeah.
I think also what I said in the last episode is that this whole thing kind of feels like a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that there's going to be more than 33 entries this year because they did have that new format that they introduced a couple years ago because they started having a lack of entries. But I think if they can start getting more than 33 entries as a solid thing, then they can hopefully return to that old format that they had, that the fans knew and loved for years and years on end. Hopefully we can see a return to that format or something similar if they can guarantee that
Another
there's
big
going to be
thing.
high interest.
All these the like lines and stuff, like when they redid it in 2014, whenever they did that. This isn't like brand new. This has been like all the groups, Fast 9 stuff. It's not like new, okay? It's not like, okay, this is new and what do we think? Like it's just something that's like, why is it like this and why has it been like this and how can we get rid of it? I don't know.
Sounds like a topic for another day to me. But moving on to our least favorite subject, just kidding, of the day. In case you missed it, where Kyle has 2 minutes to go over the 2 weeks worth of motorsport news that came out that is small enough that we wouldn't be featuring it in a normal segment. So 2 minutes are on the clock. Here you go.
Ford is bringing the Mustang to supercars. Long Beach drew the biggest crowd since the 90s. I don't really know the exact number. Corvette confirmed that Marcel Fassler, Mike Rockenfeller will be coming back at Le Mans, and that means Jordan Taylor doesn't have a ride. Oliver Turvey completes the Manor LMP1 lineup. It's not even Manor anymore. It's like those weird letters, but I say Manor. Tom Tillman is racing for Bicools at
Bicools? Bicolis?
Bicolis. You dumb sports car fan. No IMSA impact expected amid the Cadillac president's departure. So they have a new president, and they said that's not really going to impact much. The 2019 Corvette ZR1 with the ZTK package is going to pace the Indy 500 field. Barber set a Saturday attendance record. And notice how I had Long Beach and Barber in this because we're two weeks apart. Fernando Ruiz loses his sponsor, and he's not going to be racing for Labre. WeatherTech Racing returns to Le Mans with JMW. Newgarden is testing the windscreen at IMS in the IMS test. Bar 1 has their Riley up for sale, and they're going to take a new route. So it's rip to that full season adventure. The FIA is allowing teams to mount mirrors on the Halo. Julian Canal is going to be replacing Rees at Labre. The Indy test is this week, as I said, is the windscreen. And Jenson Button will be racing at Le Mans in LMP1 with S&P. Neil Yanni said he wants to race an IndyCar. The DPIs were slowed down from Mid-Ohio for the 4th consecutive race. And Paul Di Resta is going to be racing for United Autosports at Le Mans.
Dang, I actually got kind of close that time. That was 12 seconds to spare.
Well, I had 2 weeks in case you missed it.
Yeah.
Did you notice that I said Fernando Ruiz loses sponsor and leaves Labre, and then later down I have who replaced him? Yeah. That's because it was in the same time frame of me writing this down every day.
Well, awkward preparations, once again. Only a quality feature you'll find on this podcast.
Quality.
All right, so we did have a couple of races to recap. Throwing it up here a little bit because you decided we're going to do a recap of Indy Lights at Barber, which I didn't watch. Sorry, not sorry. So you know what? You can just take that entire one in your hands.
All I want to say about Indy Lights is Pato O'Ward swept the weekend. The kid is a monster. He was the guy who had that monster lap in the Rolex 24. He's great. Aaron Telitz, who has been the guy who's been painting to earn money to pay for the wrecked car from St. Pete, he got screwed in turn 1 of the first race again, and Sunday was a wet race, so it got pretty wild. And may I remind you that there are 8 cars in Indy Lights this year, so while there's only 8 cars, and that means 7 people you have to beat, there's only 8 cars. And Pato O'Ward has won 3 out of the first 4 races, and yeah, going into the Freedom 100, well, actually the GP, it's before, but still, I mainly wanted to cover Indy Lights this week because we're going to be talking about the Freedom 100, obviously. So going into there, Pato O'Ward is definitely the guy to watch. And
then IndyCar took their hand at Barber as well.
Oh boy.
Very interesting weekend. Now, this is where I'd like to point out, very sad moment. This is the Rain Race podcast. And IndyCar
Well, they
decided
did
that
race
they
in the
didn't want to
rain.
race in the rain. I mean, they kind of did, man, but they also red
They tried
flagged it and
harder.
postponed it
They
for
tried
rain. So
harder to race in the rain than that series that we don't talk about that doesn't race in the rain. Okay, they tried at least. Okay,
I don't know, man. We're gonna have to cut IndyCar. You know what? No more IndyCar on this podcast.
it's gonna be very. It's gonna be a very
I'm
bland
just kidding. You know what? We're
podcast.
not gonna lose a fan base because of that. You know, the IndyCar barber. Attempt number 1 on Sunday. They made it like 17, 18 laps. Let's see what happened. We had Charlie
and
Kimball.
then Slick Willie P put us under a red flag.
Oh, yes, yes. But before that, we had Charlie Kimball and Ed Jones having contact in the final turn. Charlie blamed Ed, saying
Things got
he was
feisty.
making rookie mistakes. Oh, yeah, there was a lot of salt being thrown around that weekend. And then everything actually remained decently clean. Marco had a small spin-off, but Will Power, like you mentioned, he's the guy who caused the whole red
Slick
flag
Willie P.
situation. Yeah, Slick Willie P on a slick racetrack. How's that for you?
I'm surprised Paul Tracy didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, bins it after the restart for the Charlie Kimball incident, and then they red flagged it. And here's the problem with a wet racetrack. Now, yeah, you can say that Barber's shape and elevation changes just make it terrible for the rain because the rain will gather up and start to pool in certain turns. But the problem is that the way rain tires work is they whisk away the water from the racing surface, which to do that you actually have to be running on the track. And when you're sitting there under red flag, what do you think happens? Oh yeah, the rain builds up until the point where it gets undrivable as hell, and then you have to postpone it until Monday, which is what they did. So yeah, we had an interesting one. They decided to put it on Monday. Luckily, it was free admission on Monday, so props to the guys at Barber Raceway, Motorsport Park, whatever you call it, for getting that one down. That was a great thing for the fans. But yeah, postponed to Monday, a little bit of an awkward time because it was the middle of the workday for everyone. But we had, actually, one of the things I'd like to point out is the driver who was putting on the most moves there was Zachary Clayman DeMello. Even though he was like 2 laps down, was just throwing it around and making dive bombs. Although, for the most part, it actually seemed pretty clean. He got involved with Spencer Pigot on the corkscrew turn.
Crazy.
Yeah, did a little bit of Tokyo drift style there. Marco Andretti was furious with him, saying that
oh yeah, that was the social media beef.
Yeah.
Here's my Why does Marco always get on beef in social media, but you never see anything at the track?
I don't know. I mean,
That's
if you want to talk about beef
part
at
of
the
this
track, we
podcast.
can talk about Pagano with Gabby Chavez after the race, but
That was so funny.
But Penske, we talked about this in our preview. Would this be sort of the end of Penske dominating all these road course races? But no, it doesn't really seem like it. On the permanent road courses, they still look like they have the upper hand, with Joseph Newgarden pulling out like a 27-something second lead. And even though it looked like they screwed up the strategy at the end, pitting for wets way too early, they ended up still pulling off a win by over 10 seconds. So
Penske definitely has the upper hand on the permanent road courses. We saw on in the practices and the qualifying, they really looked like they were back to the Penske form. Just Will Power can't find any luck, and Pagano has shown some pace in this new car. Well, new aero kit. Sorry, David Land. But he's shown some pace in the new aero kit, but he hasn't been the way he has been. It's kind of weird to see Pagano like that, but I did actually hear a good point that through even in sports cars, Pagano has really been relying on higher downforce cars and just high downforce cars, and that's really what he's been used to. And I don't know. We got to see Pagano this month of May. We got to see how he does the rest of the year. But weird start for Pagano. I think he's like 14th in points.
yeah, I noticed that as a thing. It's always a little bit of a weird season when Marco is top 10 in points and Pagano's close to being 15th in points. But
Zach Veach is beating Pagano in points. I want to point that out.
Yeah. Hey, Zach, if you're listening to this, you want to come back on for the month of May? Anyway, So yeah, overall, I think it got really exciting at the end of that race. With it looked like Bourdais might have even like a shot to win it because he was running out on slick tires and he was actually running significantly faster laps than Newgarden. And people thought, hey, maybe if the rain backs off a little bit here, then Bourdais might win it. But now it ended up picking up quite a bit more, and he had no choice but to pit for wets. Was he the last one on?
Yeah, Bourdais, in my opinion, wins driver of the race, and he was the only reason that fight for the end got it interesting.
Yeah,
Really.
I mean, if I had to say who made mistakes here, I mean, you can say Newgarden's crew pit him too early, which I think that they did. They pit him a couple laps too early, but in the end, it didn't really affect them. So I don't think. I think Bourdais' team made a good strategy. I think that ideally they hoped that the rain backed off and they could keep him on slicks until the end. Didn't end up working out that way. They took a gamble, and I think that that's a really great thing to see. They weren't gonna. I mean, they had second place pretty solidly in their hands, but I think that them throwing that gamble out there was interesting to see. Obviously, it didn't end up working out for them, but still brought it home at the end of the day with a top 5. So I think it's still good vibes for that Dale Coyne team going into the month of May. We'll have to see if they can not get a driver injured in qualifying this year.
I still say the biggest thing for Coyne in the month of May is they can't let the distractions of what happened last year seep in. They have to put their heads down and push forward and get the best result they can in the Indy 500, or else the championship might be donezo's.
Hey, patented rain race leeway right there. Month of May. How about we talk about it? Because I mentioned earlier our plans for the month of May. We're going to go try hard for the month of May. We want to bring you
Going ham.
as much quality in our realm, content as we possibly can. So some of these plans aren't set in stone, but I'd like to try to make as much of it happen as possible. What I can guarantee you is that for the week of practice, which is what it would be the second week of May, it would be the week after the GP. We will be bringing. So it'd actually be the third week, but whatever. We'll be bringing you short, around 10-minute episodes every single day of that week, recapping what's been going on in practice. We're going to have just recapping the times that's been going down, recapping notable events, like if a driver crashes, we'll analyze it. We'll get those all out to you in small 10-minute episodes, just nice little recaps in case you weren't able to see practice because, of course, they're pretty much 6-hour segments, and a lot of it is during the workday for a lot of people or school. And so that's going to be one thing that we're going to be doing. I'd also like to try to do an Indy 500 history segment where maybe we'll have a poll on the card on YouTube where we can vote on what we talk about, and you'll probably find that in the next episode. But yeah, I'd like to try to do an Indy 500 history episode, just bring up an old interesting topic that maybe not a ton of people have heard of, and we'll sort of recap it. Maybe I could get
Maybe we can do that like Community Day or something the week before the race.
Yeah, maybe we could get David on that episode to give some input, because obviously he's kind of like the resident historian. Also,
besides Donald Davison.
Yeah. Also, Kevin Rollins. You saw him in the last episode, and actually the past 2 episodes.
Yeah.
He is going to be our resident Cub reporter for this month of May.
He is the Rain Race Podcast garage reporter because he doesn't have a pit lane pass. So
basically, what I'm going to do, and I can't guarantee this, is we're going to send him out into the pit lane throughout the month of May
into the wild
with a microphone, and he can try to get some interviews. Now, I can't guarantee he's going to get interviews with drivers because it's kind of a toss-up, but hopefully he can get us some quality content, and we'll be throwing those on the usual Monday episodes. But outside of IndyCar, we have a lot of other exciting races going on. We have the Nürburgring 24 hours on the second week of May, same weekend as the GP of Indy. Obviously, GP of Indy is another big race for IndyCar. Later in the month, same day as the Indy 500, we have the Monaco GP. That's another race on the Triple Crown. So yeah, we're going to have a busy, stacked month of May, so stick around.
Let's just say we're very happy that May is today when this podcast is being uploaded.
Yep. So enjoy the
Happy
month
May.
as much as we do. It should be a very, very exciting one, especially with the new Aero kit.
Hopefully Kevin can get us some interviews. We'll either get some good interviews or some funny rejections.
I'd like to try to get maybe a guest episode on as well, but I can't guarantee that, obviously.
Those are always never guaranteed.
Yeah, there's no distinct plans for that right now, but it's a possibility. So yeah, subscribe if you are interested in all of that content coming up. And the last thing I want to talk about is the races that we have coming up. We have F1 at Spain on the 13th of May, the GP the day before on the 12th. Like I said, Nürburgring 24 Hours is also the same weekend. WEC at Spa is next weekend at the time this is being uploaded, alongside IMSA at Mid-Ohio. We will be back next Monday on the 7th to recap those two races for you.
Be ready for the Mid-Ohio recap, because Kevin and I will actually be there, and we'll also be at the GP of Indy and, of course, the Indy 500. So if you happen to know what we look like, say hi. Yeah,
I mean, I can't really send you a hat at the moment that promotes a podcast, but
not yet.
But not yet. That's being the key word. Anyway, that's gonna have to wrap it up for this one. Any closing thoughts on this episode, Kyle, that you'd like to go over?
I'm excited for the month of May, and that's about it.
All right, same as myself. Anyway,
inspirational thoughts.
Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Rain Race. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Just search the Rain Race Podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can click the card at the top right-hand corner to check out the rest of our episodes and subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/c/deductiverain, if you want to catch up on future episodes. That's going to wrap it up for this one. What am I going to say here for the end?
Just keep saying,
Yeah, Thanks for watching, guys.